Okay, so before we start this video, I just want to say that I did go back and flatten and bring down the tiles. All right, this is just some of the footage showing that because it was in messing with this shot. So I did adjust that. So now the final video, as far as I know, in the modeling portion of the gym series. And this is what I said way earlier in the series. We're gonna come back and create the welds for this. Now, as you can see, I duplicated the object and deleted what I don't want because I want to start on the mesh for this. And then I'm going to extrude and try to make it interact with that base plate that's hooked on to the main shaft. And honestly, looking back, it could have been a much better, you know, more organic looking weld point. But I'm pretty happy with it because it is not necessarily a hero part of the environment, and I'm hoping the texture will do a lot of work in integrating it. If not, again, it's not in stone. We can always come back and make it a little bit better, right? So I'm just tapering it so that it's a bit easier to see the sink in, like, because the if you look at the reference, it has like a pinching in there. And then I'm gonna obviously give it some thickness, but also offset it so it has that nice like soft transition near the edges. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, and I'm gonna create a line in the middle to give it that lip that we've done before. And I'd say that I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just applying the welds material that I did earlier to it. And yeah, so I'm sculpting in. Sculpting is a big word, but I'm just using the sculpt brush rather to soften the corners and to adjust a few points of the mesh there. So again, just some tweaks, and I think I'm gonna be happy with it here and pretty much, move on, complete that, and start to mirror it over to the other side so that I can then duplicate it up the machine, right? Just renaming some stuff there, and then we're gonna drag it up, snap, and now we have the cage is actually connected to the frame finally. So I'm just going back and looking at some areas where I wanted to tweak just a few things. Here is the base of the bench, just the interaction there. I wanted it to be a bit more obvious. And now we're gonna do some UVs. The UVs I said that I would get back to. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised I remembered. I think I had a Excel sheet or something, and I would cross off stuff so that I can be organized. And honestly, you've seen me do these exact UVs before, so we're not gonna go through that again. That is a waste of time. So we're just gonna skip to the nuts and bolts, and I'm looking at hex nut, I think it's called. 6 sides. You get the drill, and we're gonna get the correct dimensions and start to model it, I guess. So these are the correct dimensions. It looks kind of huge, but that's just because it's the primitive version of it. So I'm just looking to see, okay, how does this really look in relation to the other objects? And you can tell that, yeah, that is the correct size. So I'm just checking all of the locations, I guess, and I'm gonna start putting it in place while I model. Yes, you can model from the origin, but sometimes I do like to model in context, if that makes hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just pulling my reference there on the side, and again, like most of the other stuff, I'm gonna eyeball it, and I find this to be fun. Like I do. Oh, looks like I did decide to model at the origin. So but I do like eyeballing stuff after I find out the correct scale, because now I can just freely go about my modeling without having to trace a reference, I guess. So it's a lot more fun and free. So I'm working on that edge, right? And you can see the top or the front, I guess, of that edge is flared out. So the reason I put that middle edge loop, so that we can then tighten the back and then flare out the front, and that will help when we bevel for us to get that like corner that we're looking for. So that's the reason for me flaring it out like that. And even scaling in the front, you can start to see how it's supposed to look, right? It's starting to look correct. And you won't always want to check the smooth preview. Well, not always, but checking it does help you see how it's going to look after you put in more details. So you're able to work at a lower level. Also, zooming out does go a long way as well. And I was beveling it a bit too early there and realized I don't need that middle edge loop. So I deleted that, and then I'm going to bevel the outside. So that is going to help catch that light and make that edge look really nice and sharp, and hopefully machined a little. So it's starting to take shape, right? And that's when you observe the reference closely and see what's happening. You can carefully put in those details one by one. So now that we have the external topology good, I've deleted the faces as you saw, so that I can create a perfect circle to then extrude inside. So I mirrored it as well, because they're kind of the same on both sides. But now we're looking back at the reference, because they have those things on the inside to help hold the screw in place. So I can't remember what they're called right now. But anyway, so I have that, and I create the edge loops in order to extrude them inside. So we have that like cushion that you have on the inside. And I was testing with some divisions here just to give the inside a bit more, like make it more circular while keeping the shape on the outside. And I think I like it. So honestly, this detail is not super important because you might not see it at this scale, but So I quickly extruded the lip and pulled out the middle edge loop to give it that roundness. And honestly, that is kind of good enough for me. So just zooming out and looking at it from far, it's starting to really look like what I want it to look like. So I'm just gonna put in a quick washer at the base of the nut. And yeah, again, since we don't see those faces, we're gonna delete them. It just makes sense. So the washer is starting to take shape as well. Of course, we're gonna bevel those edges and have a nice bevel there to catch the light. Always remember the scale of what you're doing. And that is actually gonna come into play right now. So I'm creating the screw, right? And at first I approached this really obviously or really directly. And what I mean by that is I try to literally make a screw. So I'm going to go forward doing that at first, and honestly, hey, it makes sense, right? It's a screw, make a screw and then delete the outside, so you have like the inverted type of screw, right? Or you could just make it directly. But for some reason at the time, I thought that was a bit more cumbersome than, I guess, creating the illusion of a screw. And you'll see what I mean here. So I select the inner loop and I try to make the faces inverted, and it didn't work. I cut out some of the footage to save you some time, but it didn't work the way I wanted to. So I decided to fake it. And you'll see how good that works. It works really well. So what I'm doing here is cinching in the insides, giving a little bulge, obviously, because that's where the bulge of the screw occurs. But then I'm cinching in the insides, and I'm creating a little mini modular piece that I'm then going to duplicate, right? I'm just making that a bit more obvious there. But then I'm gonna duplicate it, stitch it together, and mirror it just to duplicate it again. And you're gonna see how the illusion of a screw works. Like, remember, we're not gonna be zoomed in this deep into the object or onto the mesh. We're gonna be relatively zoomed out, and from far you can't tell. You can't tell. Nobody can tell. And it's a beautiful thing. So you want to keep that in mind at all times, the scale that you're going to be viewing your scene and your models from. So here I'm just warping the outer edge to give it that character of a machined screw, I guess, or beaten a little. And this works. This works. Now, of course, I could have taken it to the next level and skewed the ribs there a little so that it looks like it's twisting, but honestly I didn't bother. I can go back and do that if I feel the need to, but here I'm just making sure it intersects with the mesh, and honestly it's really good. So I'm just gonna hide the original and create a duplicate so that I can now paste this all over the model where it's supposed to go, and you're gonna see just how nicely it takes shape. Now, because we're trying to be realistic, we're gonna adjust the depth of the screw depending on where it's screwed in. You want to, think logically, right? Because this has been created in real life, so it has to make some kind of sense, right? So yeah, so I'm placing it and making sure that the illusion of the length of the screw makes sense. So if you see it from both sides, you're gonna know that, oh well, it's screwed in deep on that end, right? So here, because it's flat and it's a curved side, I'm trying to just adjust the washer to kind of fit. I kind of overdid it, if you ask me, but is the idea is so that it can fit the area it's attaching to. And at this scale, yet again, honestly, that's why I opted to kind of keep it straight, because at this scale you're not going to notice, we're not going to be this zoomed in, and if we decide to zoom in this much, we're just going to adjust it depending on our needs, and that for my needs was good enough. So I'm just gonna go ahead and adjust the screws to give some asymmetry. You don't want them to be screwed in the same amount on either side, and stuff like that. So I'm gonna create a little group for each bolt on each side, and then obviously duplicate them all the way up. And honestly, it's looking good. It's taking shape. It's looking cool. So we're just gonna do the UV pass for the screw. Another cool thing is that it's not a real spiral, it's not a real helix, so I can just UV it like a cylinder, because that's kind of what it is. So that also helps. The illusion helps with the UVs in this sense, because everything you see here is roughly a cylinder, more or less. So you're free to UV this how you would just go about doing it in general. And honestly, that saves quite a lot of time, and it makes straightening the UVs a bit easier than if it was a spiral, right? So now that I've got those done, I'm just gonna organize them a little. I did decide to straighten most of this part of the nut. Again, this in my opinion was not necessary per se, but I did want to get in the habit. As I told you earlier, I am trying to get in that habit, especially for hard surface type modeling. It's a good thing to be able to do, to straighten UVs when you need to. So, and this is the technique I showed earlier, straightening them separately and then stitching them all back together. Sometimes that's how people get those like nice straight UVs for a whole mesh, and you're like, geez, how do you straight? Sometimes you just do it separately and stitch it back, and it works. As long as it works, that's all that matters. So now that we've done that, we're gonna go back and look over the scene, see how the nuts are fitting, and honestly is making the mesh look complete, if you ask me. So obviously we just UV'd the main nut, so we're going to transfer attributes over to all the other objects, of course, because that would be the smart thing to do. You don't want to UV all of these over and over and over again. Ideally, you would have done it and UV'd it, then copied. But the good thing in Maya, at least, is that you can copy the UVs over once they have the same topology. So that's what I'm doing here. And that's done. I'm just gonna align them and organize the UVs there for this object. And I've thought about it, and I've decided I'm just gonna skip mostly to the end, because this is basically the exact same process. Of course, putting the nuts where they belong, lining them up. I already did the UV, so that's nice. Adjusting the nuts to suit the surface they're sitting on, slanted, etc. As you can see, yeah, I don't want to make this video longer than it needs to be, so I'm just gonna cut to the end where I've put in all of the screws. And yeah, so I'm just gonna export and save over, because now I'm updating the mesh. And I was gonna put it on the window, but realistically that wouldn't make sense, so I just put the washer. I don't know if you've seen some windows have like these, like they look like little tabs, but they're very small rivets maybe, that keep the thin parts of the window frame together, because drilling in a hole in a thin piece of metal glass sometimes is not the best solution. So yeah, so that's how they're designed, and I just wanted to add that detail. So I had some issues here. Even though I updated the mesh, it would not show up, so I'm not sure what's happening there, but we're just gonna ignore that and move on. Also, the topology for that corner of the window is crazy. I gotta fix that later. But yeah, so that brings us to the end of the modeling portion of the gym environment. I don't think I'm gonna model the sled, as I mentioned earlier. So you can see me here updating each mesh with the ones with the screws, and I'm just taking a closer look at how they look in the scene. Not the best lighting, but it's starting to look real and complete, right? So I've re-imported it, and I'm looking, and I noticed the wheel, the screw doesn't make sense. It should be in the center of the wheel, so I'm just adjusting that, snapping it, and now it looks sensible. So I've updated it, and look at this scene. It looks made, and it has no textures. It just shows how well a good model and lighting scene, how far that can get you. So yeah, I just want to thank you for staying for the entire series, and if you just watch this video to learn how to do nuts, that's fine as well. I will be going over the texturing of the environment in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. Leave a like and a comment. I thank you again. This has been quite the journey. So until then, I will see you in the next one. Respect. Protect.